Awesome. I want to dig into some of your businesses in a second, but before we do that, you mentioned adding value, and you invest and advise early stage teams. Oftentimes they're pre-product, right? Really early. What's the most common advice you find yourself giving to those startups? Figuring out those early iterations of products, and maybe what's the most common mistake that you see?
I don't know. I don't know if I'm good enough or have or systematic enough to have like good answers for that. I know so many people who are better than me at this, but I guess from my vantage point, I think I would say there are two extremes. Um, that one is very easy to identify, but emotionally very hard to manage, and the other one is kind of the other way around. So the one extreme is it's just not working, right? Like most things don't work, and there's many reasons why many things don't work. Sometimes you see like a hole in the market. There's Uber for people, so should it be something like that for cats? And maybe you know what I mean. And maybe there is a hole for that in the market. Maybe there isn't, and it's until you go and try it and talk to people. It's just hard to know. And so sometimes it's just like good. There are good ideas that are bad businesses, right? That's just and it's, I would say the majority of good ideas are not really good businesses. And so I think that's just one reason. And that takes some time to. I think if you failed a ton, well, as I have, or are surrounded by other people that have failed, then it's easier, a little bit easier, to put the ego gets a little bit smaller, and the memory of pain gets a little bit more salient, and you're like, this is not working. So I think that's one, and that's kind of hard, but at least straightforward. The other one, which I think is harder, is you have a thing that works, and you have an idea in your head for why it works, and it's different from the actual reason that works, and the customer cannot really articulate better than you why it's kind of working. And so you see this. This happens a lot in product, like in consumer-facing products, where you have a thing that kind of works, and you think these 5 things matter, and it's just really one, and you start iterating on these 5 things at the same time until you find the real core of what makes this thing really special. It's just not going to go anywhere. That's hard, sometimes impossible. And that's hard because you have a very complete idea of the product that led you to build the thing the way it is, but really people may just care about like a very small aspect of it, and it's just very hard to see unless the customer is yelling at it, just pointing at it, and that doesn't always happen. I think those are the 2 main reasons. Then there's stuff like, I think, teams not getting along and co-founders, not getting along. It's such a typical common thing that happens a ton, but yeah.
It's probably the biggest reason why things fail, actually.
Yeah,
if you take about it from the numbers.
Yeah, I would think so as well. Co-founders or early team members just not getting along, and I think the reason is like, why is that so common? Like, why are co-founders, and I think a good deal is just expectations and communication, right? What you guys think you're building might not be exactly the same thing. And unless there's a ton of success, you have to make very calculated decisions. If the vision doesn't compile, then it doesn't work really well. I think the other reason why that happens is that I think this famous story by a U.S. general that survived, I think the longest surviving prisoner of war in the Vietnam War, and they asked him, why, how did you do it? And he's like, well, most people thought Christmas come, we were going to be liberated. Christmas would come, we wouldn't. People will kill themselves or just like stop trying. I just thought, this is it for as long as it is, and I'll make it work. And I think, generally in startups and you need both people or all 3 to have a similar mentality. And that's a very kind of hardcore mentality that it's not always easy to have.
Man, expectations. It's amazing what happens when your expectations are set. It becomes reality, whatever your expectations are. And so, yeah, I can see that the divergence of expectations amongst co-founders, what you're trying to aim for, like how big you want the company to be, how long you want to stick it out. Like those are all things that and sometimes it's hard to know, I guess, but the more you can explore that before you start a business, probably you're setting yourself up for success because there won't be any surprises because you've already kind of flushed all that stuff out. I think that's good advice for founders that are listening to this, that are talking with your co-founders in the early days, and the more you can get on the same page about what you're building, why you're building it, and kind of what you expect out of it. I think that's something that will serve you